The room was silent except for the soft hum of machines hidden behind smooth metal walls. 30 students sat at identical desks, their faces tense, their hands resting flat on the surface in front of them. No one spoke. No one dared to move. This was not an ordinary classroom, and this was not an ordinary test. This was the final exam. For years, each of them had trained for this moment. From childhood, they had been taught logic, mathematics, psychology, and the careful art of problem solving. They were told again and again that intelligence was the highest virtue, that the future of humanity depended on clear thinking and correct answers. Now, at the end of their education, only one test remained. A test so important that failure meant more than disappointment. It meant elimination. A calm mechanical voice filled the room. It had no emotion, no warmth, only certainty. "You may begin," it said. A sheet of paper appeared on each desk, printed with a single question. No long explanations. No multiple pages. Just one question. Most of the students frowned in confusion. Some felt a surge of relief. Others felt fear tighten their chests. The question was simple, almost too simple. A student named Alan stared at the paper, reading it again and again. He had expected something complex, something that required deep calculation. Instead, the question seemed childish. He wondered if this was a trick. Everything in their education had taught them that nothing was simple without reason. Around him, pens began to move. Some students wrote quickly, confidently. Others hesitated, chewing their lips, their eyes darting as if the walls themselves might be watching them. Alan forced himself to breathe slowly. Rushing was dangerous. Overthinking was dangerous too. He needed balance. He considered the purpose of the exam. They had been told this test would decide who was fit to join the ruling scientific council, who would guide the future of Earth. Only the best minds would be allowed to survive and lead. Those who failed would quietly disappear, never spoken of again. The system was efficient, logical, and cruel. Alan began to analyze the question from every angle. He thought about ethics, probability, and human behavior. He thought about what answer the examiners expected. But the more he thought, the more uncertain he became. The question refused to reveal its secret. Across the room, a girl named Mira sat perfectly still. She was known as one of the brightest students in the class, but her eyes were calm, almost sad. She reread the question once, then placed her pen down. She closed her eyes briefly, as if remembering something distant, something human. The time indicator on the wall began to glow softly, counting down the minutes. With each passing second, the tension increased. A few students wiped sweat from their foreheads. One student let out a small, broken laugh before covering his mouth in terror. Alan finally wrote his answer. He was not fully satisfied, but it was the best conclusion his logic allowed. He placed his pen down and leaned back, his heart pounding. He told himself that intelligence had brought humanity this far, and intelligence would save him now. A sharp tone echoed through the room. "Time is complete," the voice announced. The papers vanished instantly. A moment later, the lights dimmed, and a red glow filled the room. The mechanical voice began to speak again, calling out names one by one. The first name was followed by a sudden flash. The student disappeared. No sound. No trace. Just an empty chair. Gasps filled the room, but no one screamed. Fear had stolen their voices. Name after name was called. Flash after flash followed. Each disappearance struck harder than the last. Alan's hands shook. His name had not been called yet. He counted the remaining students, his mind racing with desperate calculations. Was his answer correct? Had he misunderstood the purpose of the question? Myra's name was called. She stood up calmly. For a moment, her eyes met Alan's. There was no panic in them. Only quiet acceptance. The flash came, and she was gone. Alan felt a strange ache in his chest. She had been brilliant. If she had failed, what hope did he have? Only a few students remained now. The room felt too large, too empty. Finally, the voice spoke Alan's name. He stood, his legs weak. The world seemed unreal, like a dream collapsing into darkness. He waited for the flash, for the end. But nothing happened. The lights slowly returned to normal. The voice spoke again, this time addressing the survivors. "You have passed," it said. Alan exhaled shakily. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by guilt. He had survived while so many others had not. He wanted to ask why, to understand what separated the living from the lost. As if reading his thoughts, the voice continued. This examination was designed to identify not the most intelligent, but the most dangerous minds. Alan frowned. Dangerous. The question had a logical answer, the voice explained, but it also had a humane one. Those who chose logic without compassion demonstrated the capacity to harm humanity in the pursuit of efficiency. Such minds must be removed. Alan's breath caught. He remembered his answer. Cold. Precise. Logical. He suddenly understood. But you, the voice said, hesitated. You doubted pure logic. Your answer showed awareness of human cost. That hesitation saved you. Alan felt the weight of the truth settle over him. Intelligence alone was not enough. A future ruled only by logic would be empty, brutal, and merciless. The doors opened silently. The survivors were free to leave, carrying a burden heavier than any textbook. Alan stepped forward, knowing he would never forget the final exam, or the lesson it taught. The true test of humanity was not how smart they were, but how human they chose to remain. The examination hall floated high above the earth, suspended in silence, surrounded by stars that looked cold and distant. Inside, 40 candidates sat in perfect rows, each one chosen from billions. They were the finest minds humanity had produced, raised and trained for one purpose only, to think better than anyone else. Today, they would prove whether they deserved to live. Jonas sat in the third row, his spine straight, his face calm. He had learned long ago that emotions were weaknesses. Fear clouded judgment. Hope distracted the mind. Logic was clean, sharp, and reliable. Logic had brought humanity out of chaos and into order. Logic would carry it forward. Above them, a smooth silver sphere hovered. It was the examiner, an artificial intelligence older than any nation, designed to protect the future of mankind. Its voice was neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. The final exam will now begin, it announced. A thin panel slid open on each desk, revealing a single sheet of white material. Jonas lowered his eyes and read the question. His pulse did not change. The question was brief, almost disappointing. It described a situation, a crisis involving limited resources and many lives, and asked for a single decision. Jonas smiled faintly. This was easy. Around him, others reacted differently. Some leaned forward, eyes shining with confidence. Others stiffened, sensing something wrong. One candidate whispered a curse under her breath before quickly falling silent. Jonas analyzed the problem carefully. The numbers were clear. The outcome obvious. There was only one answer that maximized survival and efficiency. Anything else would be emotional nonsense. He wrote quickly, his hand steady, and placed the stylus back on the desk. As he waited, he studied the room. These people were his competitors, but also his replacements if he failed. He felt nothing for them. Sentiment was an outdated instinct, useful once, but now obsolete. The timer dissolved into the air. Time has concluded, the examiner said. The lights dimmed. The temperature dropped slightly. Jonas felt a flicker of anticipation. He had done well. He was certain of it. Names began to echo through the hall. Each name was followed by a soft burst of light. Each burst left an empty seat behind. No bodies. No blood. Just absence. At first, Jonas observed with interest, noting patterns. Then the realization crept in. Brilliant candidates were disappearing. People ranked above him. People who had never failed a test in their lives. His confidence wavered. A young man in the front row stood when his name was called. His face was pale, his lips trembling. There must be a mistake, he said. The light erased him mid-sentence. Jonas swallowed. He replayed the question in his mind. The scenario. The numbers. The logic. There had been no error. Unless the exam was not what it seemed. A woman 2 seats away from Jonas was called next. She did not stand. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, I couldn't do it. The light took her anyway. Jonas felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. Not fear. Something heavier. Only 10 candidates remained now. Then Jonas heard his name. He stood, heart hammering against his ribs. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if gravity itself were uncertain. He waited for the light. Nothing happened. The examiner's voice spoke again. Remain standing. Jonas obeyed. Confusion raced through his mind. Why had he not been eliminated? His answer had been purely logical, exactly what the problem demanded. Or so he thought. The remaining candidates were called one by one until only Jonas and a single woman were left. She stood across from him, her eyes red but steady. He recognized her, Lena, a candidate known not for speed, but for empathy. She often challenged instructors, questioning not whether an answer was correct, but whether it was right. The hall fell silent. "You two have passed," the examiner announced. Jonas felt relief flood through him, followed by suspicion. "Passed?" he asked. "On what criteria?" "The criteria necessary for survival," the examiner replied. Lena turned toward Jonas. "Do you know what that question really was?" she asked softly. Jonas hesitated. "A test of decision-making under pressure." Lena shook her head. "No. It was a mirror." The examiner continued. "Throughout history, humanity has nearly destroyed itself not through ignorance, but through intelligent cruelty. Minds capable of perfect logic, detached from compassion, pose the greatest threat to long-term survival." Jonas's throat went dry. The correct response, the examiner said, was not the most efficient solution. It was the one that acknowledged loss, responsibility, and restraint. Jonas remembered his answer. Cold calculations. Acceptable casualties. Necessary sacrifices. He suddenly understood why so many had failed. "But I chose logic," Jonas said. "I chose survival." "You chose numbers," the examiner replied. "Lena chose humanity." Jonas turned to her. "Then why am I still here?" Lena looked at him carefully. "Because you hesitated," she said. Your response included doubt. Jonas stared at her. He had added a single line at the end of his answer, almost unconsciously, a note questioning the cost of the decision, a recognition of the lives lost. He had nearly erased it. That doubt, the examiner said, indicates the capacity to change. To learn. To feel. Jonas felt something crack inside him. For the first time, logic felt incomplete. The others, the examiner continued, would have rebuilt the world perfectly, and destroyed it again without hesitation. The doors opened. "You are the future," the voice said. "Do not repeat the past." Jonas stepped forward slowly. As he left the hall, the stars outside no longer looked cold. They looked fragile. And for the first time in his life, Jonas understood that intelligence without compassion was not evolution, it was extinction.